Oh, I'm going to wait a minute because then LinkedIn might catch up, like you told us last
Yeah,
week.
well, we can do the chit chat here on for the folks at YouTube because it goes out straight to YouTube very quickly and then takes some time to get to LinkedIn. So,
All right. Well, welcome to the No Show. My name's Andrea Edwards.
and my name is Joe Augustin. Tim Wade is already on a holiday, but he's thinking about us. We know. And welcome to the show that tries to put you in touch with what's happening in the world around you, in the world that you may have missed on the way to looking through your Instagram feed. And this is our roundup for 2024. And I've had a look at what's on the program. So much has happened. It's hard to believe this is a 1 year roundup. It seems like this year really has gone by much, or not gone by faster. It seems that so much more has happened this year than last year,
Yeah,
or
I
any other
agree.
year, actually.
I
It's
know. You got
crazy.
to look. I was looking back on 2023, and this is the most complicated show to put together because there's so many pieces to the story, right? But before we kick off, if I cough, I have to apologise. I've been a bit under the weather now for a week or so, and it's been a bit annoying. But I think it's time for a break, which is what we'll be doing after the show today. Are you looking
Yeah,
forward to having
well,
a break?
this is the last no show for the year. We have, of course, lined up alternative voices or diverse voices to join us as well. So, bringing on our guests, one of our two guests today, actually, and it's going to be an interesting scheduling day. But let's bring on Taryn first of all. Taryn Kearney from Johannesburg, South Africa. Taryn is a CEO, industrial psychologist, global speaker, multifaceted facilitator. Not trans facilitator, sorry, multifaceted facilitator, consultant, and mental health advocate. Sorry, I was in my mind. I bumped on what you were thinking about before, Andrea, when you were saying you were very curious about what an industrial psychologist is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So welcome, Taryn.
Thanks, guys. Boom chakalaka. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I want you to talk about, boom shakalaka. But tell me, industrial psychologist, what does that mean?
Yeah, so basically we are psychologists in the corporate space. We don't have couches in our offices though and ask people how they feel. We basically are adult teachers. So we go into the companies and we help people with their professional and personal development. And we do things from assessments through to counseling and through to training and development. And that is basically what we are, industrial psychologists.
Okay. It's the first time I've seen it. And then if you look at your branding, boom shakalaka is everywhere. Now, that term came from a 70s show, right? Am I right?
So there was also a song about it, and it was boom shakalaka. But in South Africa, we have a delicacy that you eat with maize, and it's called chakalaka. And it's quite a spicy, zesty type of onion and tomato type of vibe. And somehow I got coined boom chakalaka because of my energy. So they say I am quite full of energy, a big burst of flavor, and quite spicy at times.
Oh, there you go. Some perfect branding.
Well, we hope to get a good big dose of it and on this program today. It's a really packed show. I don't know whether we should just try and go headlong into it and get as much done as possible. I have my doubts we'll finish everything we have in mind.
All right, should we give an overview of what we're planning to do? What do you think?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so we're going to kick off with a couple of recent stories that are sort of kind of curious. A bit entertaining, and then we're going to start looking at some of the things that happened in the years, or words of the year, people of the year. So there's that cough. Words of the year, our heroes this year, and then we're going to break it out into 4 categories. So it's geopolitics, culture and sports, the planetary crisis, and then we're going to look at technology and science and what's happened this year. So they're very big ones, and then we're going to finish with just what we're seeing and maybe some thoughts going into next year. And it could be personal, but it also could be sort of collective. I'm going the collective path, so I'll be curious to see. But Taryn's only got an hour, so that's why we need to move quickly. All right, Joe, do you want to get start with the first story?
Well, before I head right into it, I'm just going to do the one thing that we never do or usually don't do, which is to ask people to share us on socials. So if you think at this point you feel there's a chance you might like what you're going to see or hear, please subscribe, like, do the kind of thing you have to do. If you're listening to a podcast right now, give us a positive review. You know what? Just give us one, even if you haven't heard the show yet, and go on faith, right? This show is designed very simply to do one or two things, right? One is to make you either the smartest person in the room and or the most irritating as well. But we'll back it up with some facts. So let's go and look at some quick facts here. Here's a story that it wasn't long ago you'd be laughed out of the room, but it's getting more and more now to be mainstream. It's a story of UAPs. Now, UAP might be a theme a term that sounds less familiar to you because it's been basically a rebranding of the old UFO. So unidentified anomalous phenomena, which covers not just things that happen in the air, the flying objects, but also in the sea and in space and everywhere else. And there's been a strange story coming out of New Jersey about a large number of UAPs in the skies, and they're not hiding in the sense that a lot of people are seeing them. They look like very large drones or able to stay in the air for a lot longer than drones are supposed to be able to do. And they look a little bit like cars. So now, first of all, there is no kind of flight data that's coming off of these drones, which is what they're supposed to have if they're a normal commercial aircraft. But then again, we don't know exactly what it is. At this point, it is recognized that these are just unexplained phenomenon. It could be a massive test of flying cars. It could be visitors from far away. It could be tourists from a planet about 4.1 light years away having a look at America one last time before the new administration. Who knows?
Yeah, or apparently there's an Iranian ship off the coast that's releasing them. I'm like, okay. Yeah, it's all a bit weird, but the Pentagon's not sort of saying anything, so it's creating a bit of interest. Of course, another big story that's happened in the last couple of weeks was the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson of the streets in New York, and it's really has been quite remarkable to watch this story and how it's been managed, and that's basically just the response to it, positive and negative, right? So the headline of an article in the New Yorker was, "A man was murdered in cold blood and you're laughing." And then in the article it commented, "The whiff of populist anarchy in the air is salty, unprecedented, and notably across the aisle." So it's obviously created a massive discussion around the whole for-profit healthcare in the United States and put a light on the suffering of millions of people in America, which is not a new thing, but it's really put the light on it for the rest of the world. The other interesting thing is it's increased the amount of personal security details that are being hired by CEOs across industries. Sure. So job ads are coming up everywhere. But the thing that jumped out for me is the knowledge that was acquired about the murderer. So Luigi Mangione, I presume that's how you say his name. We know his social media profile and commentary, where he is. We know his book reviews. But the truth is, even though he was supposedly found with a manifesto, we don't really know his motive behind it. But then you look at Donald Trump's would-be assassin, this young guy. We have no idea what this kid thought. We have no idea who he's connected to. So there's a lot of sort of interesting conversations going on around there. But one of the things, so this is a story that I think will continue to grip the nation and the world. But one of the things that I think we really need to be starting to pay attention to is the escalation of these types of incidents, not towards healthcare CEOs, but towards business and business leaders. So things like eco-terrorism is on the rise. And that's someone going up and blowing up an energy facility or a fossil fuel facility or something like that. So I think we're going to be starting to see a lot more happening as people get angrier and angrier about the lack of action that's happening. And it's from the left and it's from the right, but from both extremes. So I think that's it's an interesting time for sure. Thoughts?
Well, I must say, with this particular story, I heard about all the memes first before I actually heard about who was killed. I mean, it was one of those things where, the online sleuths, people who usually go out in search of unidentified perpetrators, all of them throwing their hands up and saying, sorry, not within coverage. It was one of those things where they were rushing in to, and I think collectively, I think past judgment, not the best of, not the best day in terms of what human beings perhaps should do for others, but at the same time, I could feel them, understood what they felt, in terms of the relative crime, shall we say. I think the discussion was about what was each guilty of, one murderer and one who had a policy that essentially killed many people.
Yeah.
Actually, very interesting fact, though. I saw last night on TikTok. I'm an avid TikTok. I don't know if I should be ashamed or I love TikTok. But I actually saw that the motive came out last night. And I don't know how accurate this is, but apparently his mom was suffering from a really bad disease. And you would actually see his mom crawl on her knees and hands, and they denied a lot of the medical bill claims. They didn't want to pay for things. And I think it kind of just got to him and he thought something had to be done. So I think it always
that's interesting, because they were considered a very wealthy family. They ran basically old people's homes. So
exactly.
When I heard that, I'm kind of like, well, you're kind of part of the problem. You come from a family that's part of the problem. Your privilege comes from that side too, right? So
so it's quite an interesting story. It's going to be cool to see how this actually, what is true, what is not, and how this pans out, and what the real motive really was.
And always remembering the first 24 hours, 48 hours after a news cycle breaks.
Yes.
You very rarely hear the truth.
Exactly. So there's always these conspiracy theories.
Reminder. Yeah.
Yes.
A reminder.
I love that.
But once they take hold, right?
You see, there we go. But let's quickly go back to wrapping up the year, right? And I want to really just speak about highlighting the top Google searches for 2024 this year. And it's actually going to blow your mind, because when I saw these when Google released it last week, Tuesday, I was quite intrigued as to why these aren't in the searches, but let's hear for what everyone else seems to think. So the biggest search on Google was, no doubt, sports, right? And particularly soccer and cricket. And it dominated all the searches, especially Copa America topped these search terms globally, and the UEFA European Championship, as well as the ICC Men's T20 Cricket World Cup. Then with regards to cricket and soccer, we go over to the US elections. That was also one of the top-led news-specific world searches. And on top of that, there was excessive searches on heat waves and what to do about this heat wave. So that's something quite interesting to speak about. And also this year's Olympic Games that was hosted in Paris. We also had top searches for US President-elect Donald Trump, and followed by Google's people category this year. Most searched was Catherine, Princess of Wales, probably due to her cancer, and the US Vice President, Kamala Harris, and all the celebrities that have been backing her, and Algerian boxer Imane Khalif, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who also led athletic-specific searches. Meanwhile, the late Liam Payne, that was set to fall over his balcony at his hotel, as well as Toby Keith and O.J. Simpson, led searches worldwide for notable individuals who died in 2024. But in the world of entertainment, we have Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2. Have you guys seen that movie? Oh, I love it, man. It's awesome. You need to go see it.
I want to see it.
Yeah, you have to. Oh, it was one of the top trending movies of the year. Well, Netflix Baby Reindeer, and I know this because I've got kids, led the most biggest TV show trends. And then a song I don't really like myself personally, Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us, dominated song trends. I don't know if you guys have heard that song, Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar. I don't know if
not my cup of tea, no.
No, not at all. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, guys. We also had a lot of queries for the Olympic Village's chocolate muffin. Now, what do I mean by this? It was made famous by Norwegian swimmer Henrik in the Summer Games this year, and it was Google's most most searched global recipe trend for this year was chocolate muffin made by this guy. Can you believe it? And then a last one for top searches was a game for under the game category. It's called Connections. And it is a puzzle game that was the most searched. But what I found quite intriguing, because I'm such a TikTok fan, was the word demure was searched the most. What is the meaning of the word demure? So that could be also a new Gen Z term coming up this year. And that's about it when it comes to our top Google searches, guys.
Sometimes I feel old when I hear the Gen Z terms. I've got 2 of them in the house, so but even they're not fans of the word. So,
well, don't worry, you're slaying it.
Natalie is here, so let's bring her on. Hello.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, everybody.
You're currently attending an Eric Feng speakers workshop, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well? It's a 3 days boot camp, so I just finished my assignment.
Oh wow! Yeah. You'll have to give Eric our love. It's great. All right, Joe, do you want to give a quick intro?
Well, okay. Let me try and find this on my good old fashioned script here that I have here. So Natalie.
Yes.
Nancy Tad.
Yes.
She's a dance fitness instructor, personal trainer, MELD program creator. I'm not too sure what that is. I want to find out more about that. A resilience speaker as well as transformation coach. Natalie's mission is empowering women to move from victim to victor. So, Natalie, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hey everybody, this is Natalie. I first started as a Zumba instructor and slowly I evolved with other programs and I become a personal trainer as well. The MELD is a holistic program that not only encompasses the physical resilience, also the mental resilience. So M stands for mindset shift, and then we have L for lifestyle, E for exercise, and finally the diet part.
Yeah. So Natalie, throughout the rest of this, you don't have to put your microphone as close to where you have it right now because it's sounding really very, very. It just sounds too close. So just okay. Nearby at your collar, we should be fine for the rest of the show. So welcome to the show. I'm glad you've joined us. We're actually in the middle of our quick takes, and I'm going to get to Time's Person of the Year. I thought what I can do is, first of all, define it so you won't be as surprised if you hadn't heard yet. Time's Person of the Year is recognition about the individual or group, sometimes device, that has wielded the greatest influence on global affairs, and in quotation marks, for good or ill. Close quotation marks. Because the person of the year this year is Trump. And I would say, based on their definition, completely on the mark. And now you have a new, actually, sort of answer to the question, what does Trump and Hitler have in common? Both were persons of the year. The full short list for 2024 in alphabetical order, not influence: Kamala Harris, Kate Middleton, Elon Musk, Yulia Navalny, Benjamin Netanyahu, Jerome Powell, Joe Rogan, Claudia Sheinbaum, Donald Trump, and Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh God, I have to keep seeing that man's face and hearing his voice. All right, so we talked about Macquarie's word of the year a couple of weeks ago, which was in shitification, and now it's time for Oxford word of the year, which is brain rot. All right, Nancy, I might put you on mute.
Sure.
Just sounds like there's some noise in the background, and just jump off mute whenever you want to speak. All right. So brain rot, what does it mean? It's in the noun, supposed deterioration of a person's mental or intellectual state, especially viewed as a result of overconsumption of material, now particularly online content, considered to be trivializing or unchallenging. So when you were talking about TikTok before, Taryn, also something characterized as likely to lead to such deterioration. Merriam-Webster's word is polarization, and another word was brat. So that's where we are. All right. Taryn.
Oh, apologies. I got taken aback by the word of the year, brat. But let's get over. 1 second. Let's get over to. I'm amazed.
It was some young influencer. I don't know who it is.
Charlie XCX.
Oh, that's it. And she's
Yeah.
wearing
Oh,
a T-shirt with brass on it. Yeah.
I remember that. Okay, cool. So this year, Taylor Swift became the first, I'm a Swiftie fan, first artist in history, wait for it, drum roll please, to make 2 billion, not million, $2 billion from her Eras tour. And Beyonce received her 99th Grammy nomination, becoming the most nominated artist in the Grammy histories. Females are just rocking it this year. And a literal banana duct taped, like imagine the food banana, duct taped to a wall, sold for a mere 6.2 million rand in New York. Anyone want to buy a banana duct taped to a wall? Anyone here for 6.2 million?
Yeah,
It was also consumed very shortly. That's the big news on that as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Natalie, do you want to come in here about the notable famous deaths that happened this year?
What I can remember is actually Donald Trump. And also, I didn't know that Taylor Swift makes so much money. Wow,
Oh,
2 billion, that's a lot.
Yeah. So Natalie, have you got the script in front of you? Or do you just want to chip in on conversations? It's all right if you haven't.
I'll chip in the conversation.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, let me come in here. With regards to notable famous deaths, we have Shannon Doherty. Wasn't she that singer?
90210.
Okay.
You're obviously a little bit younger.
You see. Shelley Duvall, Dame, Maggie Smith, Richard Simons, Dr. Ruth Westheimer, Toby Keith, Cole Weathers, Quincy Jones, Chris Christopherson, Taito Jackson, Tommy Cash, James Earl Jones, Phil Donahue, John Amos, and of course, many, many more, such as Liam Payne, etc., that we mentioned earlier on.
Yeah. Now, Natalie, I know you're younger, but were you ever aware of Richard Simmons?
Sounds familiar, but not really.
Oh, he was.
You
got to go and check him out. He was very much in the 80s. So the 80s was the TV sort of aerobics. In the morning shows there'd be a little section for aerobics, but he was the man. He was the man. He was very very funny.
Is it the guy with very curly hair, like very puff up? Oh, okay. then yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
and he's got great fuzzy hair.
I hired a graduate in Boston because she was a fan of Richard Simmons. I was so impressed that she knew who he was, even though it was well beyond her generation, that I had to give her a job because at least she was curious and had a sense of humor. All right. So our biggest heroes this year, Joe, who's your biggest hero this year? Well, this will be
it's been a year that's very hard to identify heroes. And even I'll say, even as I say the name of who I want to give some admiration to, that a few people are not going to agree with this. So for me, it's Sam Altman, the man who is largely, I think, behind ChatGPT and OpenAI and stuff like that. For the many things that he is actually sort of championing and putting forward. And also because of something that I learned about his arrangement with OpenAI. He doesn't hold equity in the company. And that was something that broke recently. And his salary is somewhere in the vicinity of $67,000. And that's all he is doing this for. The rest of it is driven by his belief in what it can do. Of course, he's also very actively an investor. He has all other opportunities and doing very well in other areas as well. I think he, I could be wrong about this, but I think he's a billionaire without his involvement in OpenAI. So, but the things that I think his vision for the future, and I think where he's going, and where I think people are also afraid of, is he wants to really, really change the world for the better. And I think if you take the time to listen to what he's doing, you figure out that he is pretty much on the course for that. Later on, when we do our update on technology as well, I'm going to show you or talk to you about some of the things that people have not noticed, I think, in terms of AI development and how much of an impact it's going to make on the world to come.
All right. So my hero of the year is Giselle Pellico, who's obviously the lady in France who was raped by 70 men, drugged and raped by 70 men. And she decided to put her face out there in the world. And she didn't realize what she was doing at the time, but she wants to take shame out of that. And I think it's incredibly powerful. There's a big pushback on Time for not putting her in the list to be considered for Time Person of the Year. But I've just got so much respect for her and what she's done this year. And I think it's significant. It's a significant contribution to global society. So she's mine. Taryn, who's your hero?
Oh, I absolutely like to say Selena Gomez. So back in the day, she used to be on Disney and Wizard of Oz and all these places, but she's kind of given up singing. Not really given up, but she's really shifted her focus on her beauty brand. Yes, I know, another beauty brand, but it's not just any other beauty brand, right? The beauty brand is called Rare, and she has developed it for people who have diseases, who struggle to use makeup, who may have the shakes and things like that, like lupus, like she has herself. And she's designed the bottles, the product bottles, in such a way that they can open it themselves and they can use it. And she just made it easy, accessible, and friendly all over. And not just that, she's hit millions of dollars with her brand because she's appealing to people who really need it. And so, and not just that, she's got a good heart, a kind person. She gives most of her profits away to charities. I'm a big fan about that. And also she is now recently, as of 2 days ago, engaged to Benny Blanco. And he's not the greatest looking man out there, but again, it speaks to her heart. You know, she has fallen in love with someone for their insides and not for the outsides. And that is quite rare in the pop and culture scene. So I really do wish the best for both of them. So she's my hero because she is a girl boss. Love it.
All right, Natalie, who's your hero this year?
I don't really have any, but I do agree with that the Selena Gomez, when she created her Rare Beauty, I think not many people are actually aware of this lupus disease.
Yeah.
And a lot of makeup in the market is highly concentrated with chemicals, which a lot of people can't use. And even though these are the minority group, it's always good to have someone to speak up for them. And also the lady that you said, which is the French lady who stood up and speak out against her rapists. I think it takes a lot of courage. A lot of people will start to put shame on the victim, but actually she did the other way around because she actually had a mindset change and said that, hey, I'm not the victim. It's not my fault. So I'm going to, tell the whole world that if something unfair to you, you should fight for it. Don't let anyone tell you that, to make you have a victim mindset. You should never have that.
Yeah, you're right. No, it's very powerful. I suppose we should add Swiftie to the heroes of the year. I mean, seriously, I know.
I didn't want to say it, but
No, but I mean, she was Time Person of the year last year, which she deserved. But for the amount of criticism and the horrible stuff that she has to endure every single day of her life, and she just keeps showing up and getting better and getting bigger. But also, I think because I'd probably go to a Taylor Swift concert now just to see what it's all about.
Yes.
The energy of love that was constantly sort of coming out of these shows all around the world. I think it was such a positive thing in the world. So yeah, let's give her credit as a hero this year too.
Boom chakalaka. I like that one.
All right, Joe, should we get into the geopolitical developments this year? And it's a lot went down.
Well, we'll try. I can rebrand this as geopolitical. Okay, well, the thing about this is that it's been a complicated year. There's so much happening. And as we talk about this, we're not even going to cover some of the other things that are running off to the side as well. So the biggest issue that we see is the issue of violence from the ongoing war in Ukraine and all that entails, including Russia's nuclear threat recently. New weapons entering the war, tremendous human suffering, and the courage of the Ukrainians. Russian propaganda is in full force. North Korean soldiers are now apparently in this as well, and on it goes. And of course, the Middle East conflicts, just where does it end? Throughout the year, we watched the Israel-Hamas war intensify with violent protests across the world. We've also seen the power of Israel's control over the media and politicians, and it's a definite souring. There's also a definite souring of political and public support for Israel. Its war theater expanded this year, including recent months in Lebanon, and now Israel is responsible for destroying all military capability in Syria as it moved in to protect the Golan Heights. What's Israel's goal here, and what will happen in the Middle East next? Will it move towards peace, or will it explode into even more violence? And will that violence expand out to consume the world? We'll hopefully finish this as well with a section, with a discussion on Syria, which I will have to admit I do not know enough about. But more about that in a while. Across the span of the largest elections this year, year for the world, with 50% of the world's population going to the polls. We'll start with Singapore. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong stepped down following 2 decades in power. And in the Indonesian general elections in February, it resulted in a new administration with significant implications for regional politics so far. In South Africa, in May, the African National Congress, the ANC, lost its parliamentary majority for the first time since apartheid ended, leading to a coalition government. Another massive election in the global south was the Indian general election, which, by the way, goes on for many, many months and was severely impacted by the heat extremes blasting across the continent this year. It finally concluded on June 1st and saw the incumbent, the BNP Bharatiya Janata Party, retain power, though with a reduced majority. So it's not all roses from Modi either. Mexico elected its first female president in June. Claudia Sheinbaum is also a climate scientist. The UK finally got rid of the Tories in July. These words prepared by Andrea. And while often positioned as a landslide, the voting turnout was very low, with youth extremely disenfranchised. The first few months in power for Labour certainly haven't been easy either. I have to say that why does the media continue to give Nigel Farage so much attention? Haven't they learned anything? Well, I think the attention they've learned is that he gets attention. Keep an eye on things here. It looks like Musk is determined to interfere not only with the US, but also UK politics, and in addition to what he's already been doing. Now, it's been chaos after chaos in France this year, starting with President Emmanuel Macron dissolving the National Assembly in June, which prompted snap elections the following month. The elections led to a fragmented parliament with no party securing a clear majority, causing political instability, and now it seems to be falling apart. Speaking of falling apart, Germany is also on that list. They're facing tough times politically. We're also seeing chaos in Romania and Georgia. What a year it has been. There have been elections in Iran, Uruguay, Ghana, and many, many more, signaling a shift in the countries either to the right or left. But notably, really, nothing much centrist happening. A vote for change ricocheted around the world as voters expressed their frustration at the status quo, the ongoing economic impact of inflation, and also the day-to-day struggles that they face. But the biggest elections, of course, of last year in recent history, the U.S., where on November 5th, Donald Trump secured a second non-consecutive term as president, defeating Vice President Kamala Harris in the elections. The Republican Party gained a majority in the Senate, while Democrats increased their representation in the House, which led to a divided Congress. And seeing all the announcements of the appointments in his cabinet, as you've seen recently, I can only assume we have a wild ride ahead of us. Like I said, maybe that's why all those UAPs were seen over Jersey. And then we have Syria. So this is where I open it up to your thoughts. I must confess, it's one of the areas that I have not spent as much time thinking about. And I must also thank Andrea for a referral from, I think it was 2 weeks ago. You said Praying for Armageddon was a movie that you recommended that I check out. I did a search for that, and I found another movie, same title, from PBS, that actually is, I think it's in Farsi, and it's a documentary by someone in Aleppo, which I'm sure it's one of those things, but it gave such a perspective of what is happening on the ground for the people of Syria. It was just amazing.
Well, so we got Asher Orr joining us. 2024 is such a messy year everywhere, and I couldn't agree with more. So basically, since this whole Syria thing, so as you guys know, I pay attention to what's going on and try and understand what's going on. And I got to tell you one thing with this Syria situation, it's not clear at all. So early signs. What is it? JHS, the party, the group that went in and have taken over Syria. Early signs are good. It's always amazing, on our TV screens to see all these prisoners released. That feels good, right? The women are unveiling. They're doing TV interviews. They're freed troops that were part of Assad's sort of army. So there's that, right? So, okay, maybe this is good. And then you saw another one where they're smashing all the alcohol in shops. So are they going to be more extreme? So it's all this sort of stuff. But then there's the conversation about Russia. Is this a good thing for Russia or a bad thing for Russia? And there's different points of view there. Some people think it's Russia laying a trap for the West to go in, just like the West left a trap for Russia to go into Afghanistan all those years ago. So there's that. Then there's the Turkey side. It's either a big failure or a big success for Turkey. So it's been really interesting. And I've listened to political commentators, so people who've worked in politics. I've listened to people who are investors. I've listened to people who are tracking war. And the one thing that's really, really clear is there is no clarity at all. We don't so what's next? Is this the beginning of a wider war across the entire region? They're talking about these sort of pipelines that by liberating Syria, these pipelines can be built, which will be good for the West. So it's a very, very big story, and I don't think there's any clarity yet. A lot of people have got very definitive opinions, but there's a lot of different opinions. So it's definitely a story that will, over the long term, we'll understand.
Sure.
Yeah, the whole thing about the military involvement of Russia in that whole crisis, that was just crazy for me. It's like the people on the ground were literally bombed by Russian planes. It's just a crazy situation in that country, and why the various people who are involved in that are involved in it. It's just I don't fully get it. Yeah.
I mean, could it help the Ukrainians? Could it make it harder? So there's so many dimensions to it. That's why it's really interesting. So I'm not surprised you haven't got a grasp on it yet, Joe, because it's like my dog walks. I'm listening on podcasts to all different points of view. Just like what does it mean? Because that's the question. What does it mean? Because we've already had this year. That's just escalation, and we need to calm things down. So is this calming things down or heating things up? And I don't know the answer to that.
I also think it's kind of a reflection of our collective anxiety when something appears to be good and we go like, that doesn't sound like it might be good. As in what I heard recently was it sounded like good things were happening in Syria, and like you've been mentioning, the thought is almost towards, well, why, right? It's like they don't deserve a good day. It's just strange.
Yeah. Oh, mate, for the people. I mean, there's like 12 million Syrian refugees that can go home, so that movement's starting to come to happen. And that's a very positive thing for Europe, right? So,
Yeah.
But how quickly as a refugee would you go home? Would you wait for it? Would you wait for it to settle, and then the European Union are talking about, okay, well, we can kick these guys out now because, and then that potentially could leave some space for refugees of other nations that are in trouble to come into Europe because the infrastructure's already in place to take these people. So it's like I don't know, it's a big one. But you're talking about the elections. So one of the things, of course, that we missed was Romania has nullified its election because of Russian interference. So so Russian interference in elections is a big part of the story this year, and it's the first country that sort of went, no, okay, we're not doing that. And that was the guy that got elected on TikTok that nobody knew.
Sure.
But I want to show you something else from a geopolitical perspective. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Do you know that picture?
Yes, I've seen it.
Yes. Joe, have you seen it?
I am trying to call it up because it's on a very small screen that's far away from me. Oh, yes. I have seen that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this has had a lot of commentary, right? And a lot of it's around RFK, like eating fast food. It's around the diet. It's around just the people. There's a lot of commentary around this picture. But the one thing, and I've been meaning to put it on social media, but I just haven't gotten around to it. The one thing in this picture that I think people need to be paying attention to is these 5 people, not just in America, but influencing around the world, deciding what life should be like for all of us, right? To an extent, all of us, when I say all of us. Do you see representation in that photo?
Hell no.
Mm-hmm. Right. So like countries, businesses, when there's proper representation and they're in a war against representation and DEI against it, right? But 5 white men sitting around a table making decisions about the future of their citizens and the world are not representative of the world that we live in. And to me, that's the issue that should have been called out with this picture.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
I just wanted to show it because I haven't done it yet. All right, I'm going to remove it.
And I'm just quite intrigued as to what was that chicken nugget that Elon Musk was having?
Oh God, just
like, it's McDonald's out of all the fast food. It's McDonald's.
It's when Donald Trump's in charge of catering. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. He loves his fast food, and obviously plastic Coke bottles, all those little sachets that are ending up in the ocean. I mean, just from a pollution perspective, unhealthy eating. The amount of chemicals in the food, the amount of sugar in the food. I mean, there's so many things in that photo, but it's 5 white men deciding, what's right and what's wrong. To me, that's the biggest story of the photo.
And what's interesting is, Musk is from my hood, South Africa.
Yes. Yeah. So what do you guys think of him? And Teal and what's the other? There's the other South African
We
guy.
do not. Yeah. What do they say in Harry Potter? It's he who shall not be named.
Is there any pride in the country for him?
A little bit, but not really. A lot of people are quite taken aback by him because he hasn't really given back to his own country, his own homeland. He doesn't declare South Africa as his homeland anymore. He says the US is. So I think he's kind of like cut ties with South Africa, even though it's part of his history and his upbringing. And his mother also cut ties with South Africa. And she's backing him all the way because of who wouldn't if you were a mother, So anyways, let's get into cultural moments and sport highlights. Is that all right with you guys? Can we do that?
Totally.
I had to change of flavor.
Yes, of course. The boom chakalaka flavor. So for sports this year, it is only really the Paris Olympic Games that truly deserves a mention here. and was considered a big success, although lots of scandal in the mix. Especially, I must quickly just say about those, a lot of the athletes were complaining about the cardboard boxes they had to sleep in, and how some of the athletes actually booked out of the Olympic Village and went to go stay in some hotels because their back just couldn't take it anymore. But anyways, coming back to that, we also had opening ceremonies, the scandal there, and everyone's different opinions about the opening ceremony. Actually, before I go on, what was everyone's thoughts in the Paris Olympic Games opening ceremony?
Well, okay. Let me just tell you what I was trying to explain to people there. What people were saying didn't actually make any sense. It wasn't logical. So we're talking about an Italian feast at an Olympic ceremony in France. So there's two stories that France are going to tell. They're going to tell a French story, or they're going to tell a Greek story. And so Dionysus' feast is a Greek story, right? And then it turned out to be a mockery of Catholicism, or Christianity. So I was kind of like, oh, come on, guys. Even Marie Antoinette, the whole beheading, that was construed to be something that it wasn't. So
a lot of opinions.
Got a bit crazy, yeah.
But anyways, coming back to that, female boxers with XY chromosomes. And of course, the poor Australian breakdancer, Reagan. I don't think she did that bad, although she's got a meme to this day that's quite used quite often. Joe, you love your memes. Have you seen that one of Reagan breakdancing?
I feel sorry for her. She can't get over this.
I think it's one of those things where someone who leans into the process and can go through the administrative effort to get to qualify for the Olympic Games, because we do know that the Olympics tends to have a lot of process around it. So if you're good at administration, you can kind of administer your way into something which might be not so well known amongst the rest of the people in that sport. So I think that's kind of what happened there, and she showed up without the necessary qualifications to be there, unfortunately, and the world was watching.
She had the qualifications. She just
I know she literally qualified in breakdancing, as in like she literally did studies in breakdancing. I understand that. Yeah, but just in terms of the level of competition, I think I don't know. It was stark. The quality of it,
I'd love to hear from her what her idea was, because she's competed in global competitions and won. Like, she's not someone who can't breakdance, but she obviously she had an idea in her head, and that's what she put out there. And the mockery has been so big, but I'd love to hear what she was thinking.
That's something maybe nice to speak about in 2025 next year, one of the segments. Anyhow, going back to I can't believe it already, 2 years of love. Can we give it up for Taylor Swift's Eras Tour again? And it's finally over on the December the 8th in Canada. It was such a huge effort. And it was 149 shows of the Eras performance, and it was in all over the world, except South Africa, by the way. Like, why is she not coming to Africa? But that's a discussion for another day. We'll have to see if we can tweet her and get her attention here to come over. But it was ranging from cities from Buenos Aires to Paris to Tokyo. And while it is not official just yet, she says, obviously, we spoke about it, that she may have estimated to make more than $2 million, but smashing a previous record of Elton John's pandemic-interrupted farewell Yellow Brick Road tour. And that was an estimated sold at $939 million in tickets over 328 shows spread across 5 years. So I must say, like, she did the Eras Tour in 2 years, and she is almost close to more than 2 billion. Guys, this is phenomenal. And why I say this, and I'm so passionate about this, is because she put a lot of effort into her concerts. I mean, she supercharged local communities and economies. She even donated a large portion of her profits to communities in the area, the local community. Her stamina, her energy, she was always on point. Her outfits, oh my gosh, I love bling, and she just blinged it 100% there. Joe, you like bling?
Only on Wednesdays.
And she
What about-
really created such a movement that you were speaking about earlier on, and that's love. And how she did that was with her friendship bracelets. So kids and people around the world started making friendship bracelets and beads with words and sayings, and was swapping and exchanging with each other. And not just that, if you had a sunflower, so we all know that the representation for sunflower is people with special needs and disabilities, and you get VIP access. And also she made sure that her whole concert was inclusive of them, which I thought was pretty rad, right? And they got special treatment from the beginning straight through. But not just that, it wasn't all sunshine and roses for Taylor Swift. She had quite a bit of hiccups along the way. And one of them was Donald Trump declaring that he hates her. I mean, he's one of the most searched guys on Google, and now declared, the Times Year of the Year, the guy of the year. And he hates her to a point where she had to cancel 3 shows in Vienna, where authorities arrested a man in connection with the Islamic attack plot. So, I mean, and that was apparently quite devastating for her, because she always shows up, and she's always there no matter what. And now they had to cancel 3 shows. But I don't know if you saw, all the people who were going to attend the concerts gathered outside her hotel in a large community and started singing her songs. I mean, that is the love you want to see around the world, right? Although she did have a bit of a tragedy, sorry guys, you can see it's the end of the year, a tragedy, I can't even say it now, where a fan died from heat exhaustion during the show in Rio in November last year, to a point where she even declared and devoted a song for her fan. She's now got a boyfriend, Travis Kelce, who plays in the Kansas City Chiefs. She never used to attend those type of football games. And not just that, with this new romance on everyone's lips, and all the Swiftie lips, especially mine, she's bringing a lot of attention to football. Not just that, where girls are starting to join their dads at football games, and it's actually impacting the relationships positively with father-daughters. So I thought that was pretty rad. So hats off to her, whether you like her music or not. Don't tell me if you don't like her music. How can you criticize her? So keep an eye out for her in the future. And I know she's got a documentary on Netflix about the previous years and all the mental health struggles that she had to overcome, and all the challenges and all the heartbreak. So I would recommend go watching that on Netflix. But on the other side of the music industry, we have Sean Diddy Combs, or everyone likes to call him. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, before we go into Diddy, so I just wanted to make clear that the Vienna terrorist threat and Donald Trump hating her aren't connected. They're separate things.
No. Oh, okay, they're not connected.
Yeah. But I did appreciate Ivanka Trump's daughter taking her daughter to a Swiftie show just after that tweet. So that was kind of interesting. But Natalie, I was going to ask you, are you a Swiftie fan?
No, I'm not. I don't know her songs well. But you know what? I just did Shake It Off in my segment. I like that song because I find it's a very positive song. I'm not a Swiftie, but what I like about her is that she's very positive and she empowers women, because for the longest time, I don't know why people hate on her. I was like, what's wrong with her? She's okay, right? But seems like she get a lot of negativity. At first, it was Kanye who snatched that award from her, and then after that, she has a lot of other backlash and stuff like that. But yet, she's well loved by a lot of fans. I remember when she was in Singapore, I was on a train, and you don't even have to tell those people are 50s because of the way they dress. So this is the power that she gives. And as what Taryn said, I think it's a very positive power. It's an empowerment to a lot of us, especially the minority group, and also to let people know that just because you're being bullied, you don't have to be a victim. And I think she set out a very good example, even though I'm not a Swiftie fan, but yeah, I do admire.
Yeah, nice.
Love that.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Kanye West is not doing so well anymore, but neither is somebody else, and he's community?
Yes, and that is P. Diddy, because he's having his day coming up in court. The renowned music mogul is facing sex trafficking and racketeering charges. There are multiple lawsuits alleging sexual misconduct, including claims of assaulting underage individuals. And a woman was identified as Anna Kane, accused him of gang rape and sex trafficking when she was 17. Another lawsuit alleges that P. Diddy and fellow rapper Jay-Z raped a 13-year-old girl at the 2000 MTV Video Music Awards after party. This is just so messy. Both Combs and Jay-Z have denied these allegations, of course, with Jay-Z labeling them as attempts at blackmail. But from all we're seeing, Diddy now and Jay-Z have many, many more are expected to fall, including top executives in the music and entertainment industry, as well as business leaders across many industries like banking and finance and more. So, guys, I think you need to keep glued and expect to see a lot more about this in our news channels and the full story coming up in 2024. But it's, like I said, it's ongoing. They're all in court. I mean, there's a lot of name smearing happening. Apparently, there's a list, and that list has people such as Ellen DeGeneres, Oprah Winfrey, on there. So that's going to be quite interesting to see what's going to be happening in that industry. So that's about it with regards to cultural moments and sport highlights. And again, I just want to quickly also just mention we did speak about the Paris Olympic Games and how that was quite interesting with regards to the top searched woman was Iman, I think it was, the boxer, and how she did such great effort there. So if you don't know about her, go Google her. She's an incredible inspiration for women out there. That's exactly what you were speaking about, Natalie. We're seeing a lot more females step up in arenas where, boxing, come on, it's awesome. Over to the next news.
Yeah, so you got that whole boxer story. That's it's a very contentious one because, of course, there is a hormone issue at play here, or a chromosome issue at play, right?
Yeah.
But the way that was handled, the way those women had to deal with that media scrutiny, especially because they were from traditionally conservative Muslim countries, and their genitalia was being spoken about on by everybody. I can't even imagine how hard that would have been for those women to deal with that. But you're right. Like there is a rise of women in industries and fields that are doing really, really great work, and the music industry is a fantastic example of it. Definitely. But this Diddy story, I think it's gonna
it's gonna be very messy. I'm gonna be very honest with you, and I think it's gonna change quite a bit. It's going to have a massive global impact in 2025. It might not be seen, but I feel that there's going to be a domino effect.
Yeah.
So that's going to be quite something to keep an eye out for. And we also have someone with regards to XY chromosomes, Costa Semenya from South Africa, a runner. And she's been taken out quite a bit, because she's a man turned woman. And she's had quite a lot of backlash as well. So it's quite interesting. I think it will be quite nice to speak about this in one of your future segments.
Yeah. Natalie, Natalie, have you got any thoughts on this before we move on to the planetary crisis? Because in your health space, is this something that sort of comes up?
No, not really.
All right, Joe. I mean, it's been very politicized as well.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges for me is the whole thing about the differences of real differences between bodies based on genetics, right? There's something about that, and whether or not we accept that we have competitions based on certain genetic realities. So what's happening is that there's a conflict between what genetics creates and then culturally what we begin to accept as well and what we figure out, right? So that really is the big issue, because if you talk about the ability to identify as a different gender, this has been scientifically take it up as a problem or as a challenge, right? And essentially, there is hardly any sport where a male chromosomally genetically male person will not dominate over a genetically female person. There's some categories right now, like very long distance running or high stamina events where women are better than men. And I mean, I speak only in genetic terms, but yeah, for the most part, the genetically male person is going to be superior. So the issue is then about competition, right? So I think there's footage of Serena Williams, for instance, where I think everybody came up and really got on John McEnroe's case when he said something about men versus women in tennis, and then the question was put to her as in what she felt about that, and she said, yeah, absolutely, there's no way. She actually said there's no way she could beat the 100th guy, because it was that much of an advantage. So it's not as straight up and as simple, and I think that's the real issue. We have to come up with something. Some people who are a wise council of elders of the genders may have to come up with some kind of a solution that we can all live with,
or within the sports.
Yeah,
the issue is the politicization of it, right? And it was a huge part of the US election. So the female boxers at the Olympic have been given approval by their own sort of organizations to fight as women. They're not transgender. They've just got some extra bits going on in their chromosomes, right? A transgender athlete is a different thing to me, as far as a man becoming a female and competing in swimming. But it shouldn't be politicized. What should happen is the swimming federations should sit down globally and say, what's our take here? Do they create two more streams of competition, or understand, like, because once you start taking all the hormones and stuff, the benefits go away. So there's a lot more to it. But it's like everyone's jumping in and having an opinion on this stuff. But actually, when you actually look at the medical sort of doctors,
scientific,
it's very different what they're saying compared to what the mainstream media is saying. So that's what I don't like about it. It's, especially for females. Where they're being
it's something people can have a very quick opinion about without knowing the science, and that is and because people don't know enough about the science to rebut or to push back, that's where it goes into a category where you solidify your opinions based on unchallenged views, and then you don't have a balanced view. So that's really, I think, the big issue.
Sure.
All right.
I'm going to love and leave you guys. I need to go wrap up my year. But I absolutely loved spending time with all three of you. You guys are awesome. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And for those listening and joining in, please do like and subscribe and share this podcast. I think it would be great for more people to hear about what's happening around the world. And let's just up our general knowledge in essence. So, guys, thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate it. Have a great, great day.
Thanks for joining us.
See you around.
See you, Duz.
Yep.
Ciao.
All right. Now we're going to talk about the planetary crisis. So, oh God, I'm talking like Taryn now. She's
Sorry,
great.
guys, I have to leave as well because I just got last minute notification about something.
Okay.
I have to leave you guys. So sorry.
No, it's okay. You weren't, because we weren't sure what you were doing, so you haven't had a chance to say much. Do you want to give us a message to everyone for next year before you go?
For next year, I think I find that it's there's a lot going on, and a lot of people are very confused right now. Especially, I want to bring the attention to mental health. I know it has been going on for a while now, but I think it's precisely the world is very messy, and there's a lot of things going on. What's with the war, what's with the US election and stuff like that. And even though that guy won, which I'm quite surprised, but not surprised. I think we should really take a look at minority groups. And as what Joe said, it's not gender-wise. I think a lot of people need to do more research before we can input our opinion. It's never just as simple as, oh, from a man change to a woman or woman change to a man, because it's at many levels, there are a lot of things to unpack. And then for empowering women, I think more women need to step up because we have a voice. And I think we need to let more people know that, it's doable. As long as we put our heart to it, we can spread love and positivity around. So not much on the sports and world news because I'm not really into that. But yeah, that's my conclusion for next year. Stay positive and do whatever you can to spread love.
Nice. A great final message. All right. Good luck with the rest of the workshop
Thank
or
you.
boot camp.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. All right. We are going to talk about the planetary crisis. Are you ready for that, Joe?
Yeah. Just before you start that, I just want to point out that I said something and then two women left.
Don't take it personally. You haven't been cancelled. All right, so we're going to look at the planetary crisis, but I actually prefer not to call it the planetary crisis. I like to call it the polycrisis. And I'm going to show you my image and take on the polycrisis, which looks at all the different arms, because a lot of people talk about climate change. And yes, the climate change is a thing, but there's so much more happening. And so the polycrisis is the simultaneous occurrence of several catastrophic events happening at the same time. So that's why I just really wanted to focus on that. So I'm going to focus, I'll take this off, just let me remove it. So I'm going to focus with the planetary crisis. And the reason I didn't say climate change is because, can we make that bigger? Yeah. Because I think it goes well beyond that. So to me, the most important information to pay attention to is the 9 planetary boundaries. So the Stockholm Centre do these, Johan Rockström's doing a lot of presentations. Please listen to them. So the 9 planetary boundaries are climate change, novel entities. So when you say novel entities, it's plastics, microplastics, nanoplastics, chemicals, nuclear waste, blah, blah, blah. Stratospheric ozone depletion, atmospheric ozone loading, ocean acidification, which has been gone off the charts this year, biogeochemical flows. So that's nitrates or nitrogen and phosphorus, freshwater use, land system change, so deforestation, soil erosion, which is really happening at scale now, and change in biosphere integrity. So they're the 9 planetary boundaries. So it's really important to understand them because they're all at risk. And if we cross all 9, so we've crossed 6 now, if we cross all 9, basically we're in a runaway situation. So it's not just climate change. However, let's get it stuck into some of the extreme weather events we saw this year. And so obviously, the flooding in Spain in Valencia recently was the worst flooding in 50 years. More than 200 people died, still so many missing. But some later coverage of the longer term impacts, it's an absolute disaster. But if we go back to early April, we had the Brazilian floods in Rio Grande do Sul, and it affected over 90% of the state. It's an area the same size as the UK. And it displaced nearly 600,000 people and caused 169 deaths. But the floods have been dramatic in all over the world. I mean, Nepal it was absolutely shocking floods. Nigeria, Sudan, and they've killed millions, displaced millions. They've killed thousands, displaced millions, but also caused incredible infrastructure damage like dams, buildings, that sort of thing, but also agriculture. And so they're wiping out food sources in some of the countries that are really struggling. Extreme weather events are going to cause more and more food security risks. We're seeing that more and more all over the world. And it's another reason why we're seeing inflation. So the politicians need to start talking about that. This year, heat was an absolute killer, not just for us, but for wildlife and for our food sources too. So in Asia, we had an extended hot season that started in February and went all the way through to July in some parts of the region. It was horrible. It was really, really horrible. It scared me, the heat. I was in Thailand when it happened. So in Singapore, you're a little bit safer because the infrastructure is here. The resilience is built into Singapore, whereas the majority of the global south does not have that. It's the reason we moved back. So the heat impacted countries like India, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, and of course in Thailand, where I was. and it caused a lot of issues, a lot of disruptions, a lot of people died, but we still have no idea how many. And then by June in Pakistan, places like Karachi were experiencing 45 degrees Celsius temperatures, which is deadly. And we were hearing about morgues being overflowing with bodies, and we still don't know the true number of heat stroke deaths because they don't know how to do it. In Italy and South America, we've seen severe drought affecting agricultural production. In the south of America, it's obviously causing a lot of the fires that we're seeing in the Amazon. So it's creating food shortages and economic challenges. But in Zambia and Zimbabwe, which we're not hearing as much about, they're going through the worst drought in a century, and there's millions at risk. 27 million lives are affected by this drought, and 21 million children are currently malnourished. So we've also seen the buildup of heat in the oceans, which is being reported, which is still really high. It's not as high as 2023, but it's still really high, which is creating bigger issues with things like hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons. Sorry, I've got a little spray. We obviously Hurricane Helene led to unbelievable destruction in the US, which cost a fortune, but it's countries like the Philippines that are really, really going to suffer. They had 4 typhoons in 10 days in November. It's never happened before. I spoke to some people in the Philippines. They've lost all of their crops, and they're importing a lot more food for the first time, which of course is going to be a catastrophe for the people. So some of the highlights this year. So we're seeing this. It's big. It's going to get bigger. It's never going to get better. I think that's the important thing for everyone to understand. And understanding it and the ramifications of it is important to get ready. So we've seen no plastics treaty, which to me is just a shocking indictment on the fossil fuel and the plastics industry. We live with this waste in front of us, especially in Asia. It's disgusting. Not enough money for the developing nations at COP29. And I just want to say, if anyone thinks our leaders are going to do the right thing, they're not. If this year hasn't proved it, we're on our own, so we've got to come together as a society and get to work. So 2023 was the hottest year in 150,000 years, and 2024 is going to be hotter. Although we did see one report saying it might just come in under 2023, but we have passed 1.6 degrees Celsius of global warming. So remember, 1.5 degrees is when the Paris Climate Agreement, but it's also when the coral reefs start to die off. So we've been facing this alarming milestone for a few years now, and, it continues. Climate change is accelerating, and we need to be unbelievably ambitious to mitigate any of this. And we can't solve it. There's a lot that we can never turn around, but we can make it less worse. But there is no sign of action that's relative to the alarm. We're seeing that the international climate case is happening at The Hague. Will it make a difference? Corporate accountability and sustainability legislation is coming more and more, especially led by the EU. There's some issues with it. This is good news. The fires in Canada, mainly caused by drought. In 2023, those fires contributed over 640 million metric tons of CO2. But the other thing that isn't often talked about is the CO2 is then dumped on the Arctic, and therefore it absorbs more heat, and we see more ice melting. So they're expecting a blue ocean event before the end of this decade, which means more warming. Permafrost thawing and wildfires across the Arctic, right across the Arctic. It's traditionally a carbon sink. It is now a source of CO2 emissions. The Earth energy imbalance is something that the scientists have been talking about for a while now. And so basically they've shown that there's less clouds, which means more heat. So there's a reduction in low altitude clouds, and that basically is what typically reflects the solar energy back out into the atmosphere, and instead it's being absorbed into the atmosphere. And basically what they're saying is this is the reason why there was 0.3 of warming that couldn't be quantified, and they're saying this is the reason why it's happening. So another big one, global wildlife populations have declined by 73% since the year of my birth. in the ocean health is, oh God, it's really bad. So the Ocean Health Index reported a global score of 69 out of 100, marking the largest decline observed over 13 years. And it reflects deterioration in areas such as biodiversity, clean waters, and sustainable fisheries. So elevated temperatures creates bigger impacts like hurricanes and cyclones. But there's an overfishing crisis that we need to get a handle on. Oxygen levels are going down, which threatens marine life and ecosystem stability. Ocean acidification is a really, really big issue, and it's because of CO2 absorption. And so things like lobster and crab, if you enjoy them, they'll probably be off the table soon because their shells break down in acidic environments. We've got the horrendous plastic pollution in the ocean and, coral bleaching on such a wild scale. I've said it before, Joe. I think we've already lost the corals, even though they're still there. I don't think we can save them anymore. So, these are big, big things, and it's been a really, really big year, and I think a lot more people are waking up to it. A lot more people are moving into despair because of it. If you can move beyond despair into action, it's really the best place to be. And moving into acceptance, it's not going to get better, but it can be less worse. Doesn't sound like a very inspiring slogan, right? But
it's a t-shirt, yeah.
Yeah, but but if you can accept the reality but then just understand that be empowered to act. That's the most important thing. Be empowered to act. Save something locally, be part of something globally, whatever it is. When we look ahead, Australia's in for a potentially horrific summer. So Queensland's currently getting hammered by floods, which is typical for a La Nina year. But they're expecting some of the worst fires they've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because there's so much dry stuff, right? The global south is obviously going to be preparing for the heat extremes next year. Is it going to be warmer than it was the year before? There's no indication to show any cooling down, but then we're seeing already some of these heat extremes in South America and Africa and, of course, in the Pacific Islands. And then another big story this year was AMOC, which is the Atlantic Meridional Occidental Current. And this is the one that sort of moves the heat and the cool around the world. And it's very, very important. It could send the northern hemisphere into an ice age, and it could heat up the southern hemisphere. So it's an important one, right? So they're talking about that. So time to face this. I know it's not pretty. I know it's not nice, but it's here, and business as usual is not going to get us out of it. Replacing your car with an EV, well, it might feel good. The best thing for everyone to do is go and use public transport, walk, ride a push bike. Go vegan if you can. At least reduce your meat intake by 70%. 70% is the magic number. Reduce your energy and material consumption by 70%. That's the magic number. And if you think about what that means, and that's flying, driving, the clothes you buy, the food you eat, where it comes from. Everyone could reduce that by 70%, and might be able to get out of overshoot. But then we've got to go and regenerate nature, and we've got to do it all really quickly, because the hotter it gets, the less opportunities we're going to have to succeed. So that's the planetary crisis, Joe.
Well, it's a big one. Don't try and eat the whole sandwich at once. I frequently try to encourage people, when they're facing very, very large problems, try not to frame it in such a way that if you can't solve the whole problem can't be solved, right? It's about doing the small things, like Andrea was saying just a while ago. It's about that. If you can do something, and it doesn't mean doing all of it at once. I mean, the idea of going vegan, for instance, as it's a digital solution. It's on or off, right? But there's also cutting down. There's also saying I'm going to have one less meal a day, a week, a day, or whatever, and that can help as well. And in terms of clothing, I think that's the real big one, because people are unwilling to give up a lot of their lifestyle. And one of the biggest things really is clothing. It's surprising how bad that is for the world. This whole desire of the desire we have to look good in front of each other, so we try to get new clothes and new fashion. It's remarkable that it actually is worse than getting on a plane. So just you'd have to think about that.
Yeah, it's not just the emissions, it's the pollution of fashion, especially fast fashion, right? Yeah, I mean, like I said, 70%, we've got to reduce our lifestyles by 70%. So what does that look like? I find veganism very challenging, but I do things like try and only eat chicken that's from an organic farm, so things like that. So none of us can, we need 1 billion people changing imperfectly and then influencing the next 4 billion. So it's not about perfection. But if you're buying 50 new items of clothes a year, you're contributing to the problem, right? So we need to be buying 4 or 5 new items a year. So have you got enough T-shirts to get you through, Joe?
Well, I have underwear that's barely hanging on, much to the chagrin of my wife. So let's talk a little bit about some of the good stuff. Technology and science has made a lot of progress in this past year. Some of it, you'll see some opportunities in there, and some good news as well for the environment, we hope. So when it comes to technology and scientific developments in the year, most people will only see the rapid prevalence of AI into almost every aspect of our lives. Jobs have been lost to AI in the last year, and it's continuing on as well. But here's the updated and reorganized version of these breakthroughs based on some categories. Okay, so I've looked at it first of all from a computing perspective, and I put the most recent developments first. So you may have heard just a few days ago, Google unveiled its Willow quantum chip, and it represents a major leap in quantum error correction. Now, the big thing about quantum computing is that it could go really fast, but it would make a lot of mistakes as well. And what Willow does how Willow changes the game is because it has really succeeded in scaling up the reduction of errors exponentially. So this is the equivalent of having a friend who can move their arms really fast, but they keep slapping and knocking down things. And then they've come up with a process that really helps to make that whole thing more organized and calmer. And so less damage to the data happens so that the errors aren't significant. And to give you an idea of what quantum computing can do, it can take a problem that would take literally trillions of years based on current computing power and get it done in 5 minutes. So when this was launched, or this particular news was released to the world, it actually had an interesting impact on the markets as well, because crypto actually had a mini crash because of it. Because the idea was, or the idea prevalent in crypto is that, everything is secure because it's being kept behind all these large difficult solutions or difficult mathematical problems. But here you have the idea of quantum computing, which can solve these problems in a matter of minutes. But crypto is back again. But that's the story about quantum computing. There also has been a lot of advances in AI. This is in the area of natural disaster predictions. So Google's AI division developed sophisticated models capable of accurately forecasting hurricanes, wildfires, and other climate disasters earlier this year. And that's made a huge difference, or can potentially make a huge difference in terms of how we respond to these big problems. So while they're coming more often and they're getting bigger, having the specific information about how to address them, that's something that's becoming better. AI has also come up with, I believe it hasn't come up with it. AI is responsible for some hope for people who may be facing cancer. And in fact, we may not even face cancer because of vaccines that we can develop or have been developed. So you've heard about mRNA, right? You've heard about those things being done for COVID and stuff like that. But now we're moving it out as well, because the urgency of COVID has kind of passed, and now there's room and capacity for it to be applied to the original intentions that it was created for, these mRNA vaccines. The idea was to address things like cancers. So pancreatic, ductal cancers, and some additional very complicated cancers can now be looked at in a more specific way because of what AI allows science to do. So they can have more customized genetic solutions, which are going to be, it's almost the equivalent of an individualized vaccine for cancer, or even when it comes to trying to cure it using immunotherapies. you can give specific information about your specific body to your specific cells so that it can mount an appropriate response. So that is the world of AI.
I was just going to say I didn't realize the mRNA story.
mRNA. Yeah.
I didn't realize that was an AI story too. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, it didn't begin as an AI story. It began many, many years ago, right? So it's a long story of failure that eventually succeeded. But AI right now, laid on top of what mRNAs are about, is what enabled it. So at the start of COVID, for instance, the vaccine that was developed that we first used, it's the one that I think, anyway, the first mRNA vaccines, those were developed literally in a matter of hours using machine learning and AI. So that's the power of it. So you could create these virtual experiments and solve the problems much faster than real time. This is actually one of the big things that made people doubt the vaccines in the first place. How fast it actually came out. Yeah, it just seemed too quick.
Although the other side of things, Joe, I still really struggle with the whole longevity sort of push because, I've just done the planetary sort of update, right? And so we're going to have a lot more people living a lot longer for what, and then I was listening to a population, the rapid fall of human population, which is obviously South Korea, Singapore, Japan, China. They're all at the front lines of this, and it's the cliff is so fast. It's 12 years, and there's this massive reduction, and then you've got all these old people. So I think it was was it in South Korea? So for every working adult, they will have 8 grandparents to take care of. So not obviously their own grandparents, but there will be 8 grandparents that their income will have to support. So it's a really interesting one. So longevity with the planet that we're moving towards, longevity with the societal infrastructure that we're going to have to support it or not. It's a bit of a complicated one, right?
Well, so the big future that we're looking at, and it may evolve not genetically, evolve organically, is maybe based on the following, right? Because you think about what's happening with the world right now. We are, like you said, not replacing ourselves anymore. In fact, even people having sex, that number has gone down. Thank you, Netflix. So it's just Netflix, no chilling, right? Then there's also the idea of enhanced healthcare and healthcare outcomes. So, there was a survey I saw a couple of days ago, which is where people were asked if what would you like, how old would you like to live to, given the world that we live in, and the number wasn't as high as you might think, right? So it's about 60 to 70. That answer changed dramatically when people were then given a different idea. So what if we could guarantee health, right? If you could guarantee health, what would that number be? And this is even amongst older people. And that changed completely the outlook that they had on what life and what meaningful life was about, right? And if we have a broad societal change, and this is a really, really big idea, if we change the way our bodies age or don't age, if we cure aging, as some people have been looking at it, right? We change the way we look at the world. So we don't look at the world, we wouldn't look at the world as saying we're going to have that number of older people being supported by the younger people. It would be a world where you have that number of more experienced people in good health who can make wise judgments, helping all the rest of us make better decisions and move forward. And you know what? If you think about what's happening with the way the world works, and if you're worried about the poly crisis, get old people to know that they're going to be around for another lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think they will change how they do things, because they're very concerned about the temperature in their homes. If they realize they're going to be around for another lifetime, and and it's going to be uncomfortable, they will do something about it, and they will have the means to do something about it. So it's a crazy idea. It sounds like science fiction, but just imagine a world where people do live 200 years, and what then would they do if you live 200 years?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to move, can I move on to the next few
years?
things?
Yeah, go for it. Just
Yeah,
thinking
it seems like
200
a long
years.
time, but the afternoon's long for me because my knees begin to hurt, right? But if I was the same guy I was when I was 12, the day wasn't. You go to Disneyland as a kid, you go like, oh, we have to go home, and as an adult, you're just queuing and you go like, let's go home. So let's talk about space exploration and astrophysics as well. This last year, China's Chang'e 6 mission just came in November. They retrieved samples from the moon's far side, and this is a historic first. They took a 1.9 kilogram haul of confirmed volcanic a 1.9 kilogram haul that confirmed the volcanic activity for over 2.8 billion years, or at least from 2.8 billion years ago. And it shed some light on the lunar revolution. Of course, this is not only a great big step for science, it's also a big PR move, I guess, for the Chinese space program. NASA's Europa Clipper launch is happening earlier this year. NASA launched the Europa Clipper mission to study Jupiter's icy moon. Now, this mission focuses on the detection of potentially habitable subsurface oceans, marking an important milestone in the search for extraterrestrial life. And one more idea, which you probably may not have heard about, is laser cooling of positronium at CERN. Lots of words there I didn't understand until I read this. Positronium, first of all, it's a kind of substance. Don't really need to know what it is. But the idea that you use lasers to cool things down, it's mind-boggling. But it was a big step in the area of quantum gravity. And for those of you who are wondering, why do we even think about quantum science? There is a whole world that makes sense right now with all the science that we already have. And there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't quite make sense until you apply quantum theory to it. And more we're finding out that we seem to be right about those ideas as well. So a lot of phenomenon that may have been put down to just things we don't understand, the spiritual world, premonition, all that kind of stuff, may one day, and I'm not guaranteeing it, I'm just saying may one day be shed light, may have some light shed on it, because we begin to understand a little bit more about quantum processes. It's an interesting world that we potentially could be living in.
I know a quantum expert. She's amazing. And there's also a huge spirituals part of the story, but she works for one of the big global corporations. I don't know if she'd be allowed to, but I'll see if I can get her on one of the shows next year, because I think you'd really enjoy learning from her and talking to her and listening to what she has to say. Me too.
Well, I just got to say, however, though, if there's one thing that's more boring, I mean, it's one of the most boring things to hear two people speak about quantum science.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about
what it means to everyone. Why should everyone care, right? So it's one of those things. I think, there's a lot, because the tech bros for me. So I've always worked in the technology field. I know I love the technology people. I don't love them very much at the moment, but they're so passionate about what they do. They're creators, especially the developers. They're creating something, right? But what they're not very good at is understanding the implications on society and whether or not those implications are good. So, and when we see lots of conversation around that, but I've always understood quantum as being a good.
Potentially.
Yeah, well, like
no,
everything can be bad, right?
you're not wrong, but like any technology, right, can be used for something terrible, right? So the instant thought that came to mind, I hadn't even contemplated this before you mentioned what you just said, right, was that if I mastered quantum technology to a point where I could actually disable an entire army or country, again, the terrible idea that you can turn anything into a kind of weapon, it's first of all, it could be devastating if you understand how to use quantum technology to influence a molecule here that could influence the molecules in China, in Russia, or any part of the world. That's a crazy idea as well. So, it's not always going to be about good things. I do have faith in the human spirit as well. But again, We've always had people who come along and figure something terrible and horrible, and sometimes not always trying to do that. I think there's one story that I always go to, which is the story about the man who was responsible. I don't know his name right now, but the man who was responsible for creating the gas chambers, for World War II, is also the same guy who came up with chemotherapy, right? Which is on the flip side saved millions of people as well. So anyway, speaking of that, we got medical and biotech breakthroughs from the year as well. There's been a breakthrough in CRISPR approvals in late 2024. CRISPR therapy was approved by the FDA to treat sickle cell disease. Now, this is a huge disease, and if it gets to be scaled, it could radically change the lives of many people. Also, speaking about changing the lives of many people, a non-invasive test for Alzheimer's. So previous to the development of this new test that I'm going to mention in just a moment, the test for Alzheimer's, what you had to do is get a lumbar puncture. So you'd have to go into your spinal fluid and get that sample, and then they can do some testing on it. Now, what they've come up with now is a non-invasive blood test for that. It's the ALZ p-tau 217. I want to wear some big teeth for this. But essentially, all the big news is that you don't have to do that very scary procedure where, I've done that. I've done the spinal tap as well. It is quite scary because as they reassure you and go like, how this won't hurt much, what can go wrong is, all kinds of terrible things, including paralysis and stuff like that. You may recall Neuralink began human trials in 2024. What Neuralink is that technology that Elon Musk was championing, and that's an implant to allow paralyzed patients to communicate directly with external sources. That happened this year as well. There was big progress in artificial heart design as well. The company Bivacor, the Bivacor totally artificial heart became a crucial innovation in improving ventricular assist devices this year. It uses a single rotor to mimic pulsating blood flow. Provides a safer environment for critical heart failure patients awaiting transplants. I'll just pretend I understood what I just said. There's also been progress in 3D printed biomaterials for implants. Now, so if you think about what happens most times when you hear about transplants, almost immediately is you think about the rejection of the organs, right? So 3D printed biomaterials are less likely to cause these kinds of problems, and you can also build. You can create scaffolding around which cells can grow. It's a pretty complicated process, but essentially the 3D printing of complex organ replicas and biocompatible implants makes the way for regenerative medicine that could make transplantation far more accessible to people waiting for donor organs. Now, let's get to the environmental innovations that may give you some good news or make you feel better about things. Towards the end of this year, have you heard of FervoFlex technology?
No.
Okay, so what they've done is they have developed decentralized power microgrids that uses modular geothermal units. Now, this basically guarantees continued renewable energy generation in harsh climates and supports global renewable energy transitions as well. So I think the idea here is, most times when you look at technology solutions or energy solutions, there are large solutions. This is a small solution that makes it possible to roll out without a huge expense. There's also you talked about plastics before. Biomass came out with plastic alternatives. Hang on a moment. There are lots of different ideas here. The company like Metero use agricultural byproducts and biopolymers to combat pollution while creating viable replacements to synthetic plastics. So if you think about this, maybe natural plastics. Yes, plastic's still there, but from a natural source. And of course, lithium-ion battery recycling has made great steps in this past year as well. So the methods that have come in now are not only better for the environment, but also more efficient in terms of retrieving the chemicals, retrieving especially lithium and cobalt. So it puts less pressure on mining and those other sources. Of course, it doesn't stop the industries from wanting to explore cheaper sources of those, but here at least you have an alternative. So that's a little bit about science, technology, and see what I hope.
I just want two things. So the plastics replacement, right? So there's plenty of options in the market. Plenty that have been created from seaweed, from all sorts of things. The competition is the fossil fuel industry. And as we saw at the plastics treaty, they're not interested in stopping production of plastics that can't break down in the environment. So that's one of the things. That thing that you were talking about with the heart of 3D printing of biomaterials, I thought that was really fascinating.
Using biomaterials to 3D print,
Yeah, and I've got some people who are dealing with some pretty serious stuff right now, and anytime I see some positive sort of scientific research on progress in a particular area, I'll sort of send it to them, because things are, like you're saying, things are really, really moving quickly now. So to people who are dealing with some pretty big stuff, but if we're going to live longer, if they can replace our hearts like that so easily, right? If we're going to start living longer and they can deal with some of the biggest killers in society today, we better also take care of the planet if we're going to be living longer and going to be in it, right?
So that's why this is about making that relevant, right? So the idea is, for instance, because we have this idea that so I was having a discussion with an older friend the other day, talking about how we look at life, and many times we get to this point we go like, well, I haven't got long left. Right. So we actually bring our goals down. We cut down our ambitions. And as we cut down our ambitions, we think about the world that we can control and we can influence and what is important to us. And so we actually reduce our goals from having big global kind of plans to say like, I have my family. Right. So if you think about that evolution, we look at it traditionally as the end path. You get to the point where you go like, oh, I have my family. When really, if you were closer to immortality in a realistic sense, there is a greater sense that you will try to protect the future. So if you think about why sometimes we choose to do something that we find maybe like, oh, this won't be so good. We think about it in terms of like, oh, no one's going to find out about it, or I don't care because no one can see it. So the world that we live in could be enhanced, first of all, if we lived longer, and also if we recorded everything that we did and let everyone know about it. So enter the world of blockchain for human behavior, right? So it's it'll be interesting. I mean, it's definitely interesting. It's a science fiction novel that may have already been written. But if you think about those ideas, it can make a big difference. Now, one of the things that I wanted to just point out about the whole year that's gone by is the amount of convergence that has happened. So AI has met with computing technology and met with the climate crisis, the poly crisis, and health as well. And it all is bringing things closer together. Everything is actually interconnected, right? Your environmental solutions are also being driven by AI detection, as well as decision making, instant decision making. So it's a world that's exciting and it's kind of chaotic. And I think one of the difficult things about having a sense of enthusiasm or optimism about it is that whole tech world is a bit complicated. It's not as easy to understand as the world's going into a bad place environmentally. The bigger problem in the environment seems like this horrible thing, and so I can feel very much threatened and anxious about that, and not see what I think is a reason to have some hope as we move forward as well, because that hope is kind of hidden behind a lot of science talk, right? Stuff that's hard to understand. What could this be? How could life get better? But I do hold I do hold a place for that. I do think the world is going to get better while it gets worse. the weather outside is going to be really frightful. The weather and the stuff that's happening inside is going to get a bit better. Bit by bit, we're going to figure things out. And we are going to get to the point where technology gets good enough. I mean, the technology that helps you print an organ to replace, something that's gone wrong in your body is also the same kind of technology that, if scaled, could print animals or print meat and do different things. Again,
Yeah.
there are always unintended consequences and what have you. But if we really, really got good at recycling, if we could really take whatever is the result of our consumption and put it back again into a kind of a virtuous cycle where you could have products again that can feed consumption and at the same time also feed the environment, because you're restoring these things back into their place through a process which we can't do right now. I think there's something there.
Yeah, truly circular. I just don't think technology is the answer. And the problem is the technologists think it's the answer. So all the focus is going on there because that's obviously where money can be made. Whereas a lot of the answer is in regeneration of nature, sort of giving land back, reducing our meat consumption. So we're reducing it because it's not just the cows taking up the land. It's also the amount of agriculture that is dedicated to growing food to feed the cows, when they provide such a small percentage of food and they have all these other issues, right? So we've got to look at it holistically. And I think if there's one thing I just say to everybody, we've got to start looking at this. I don't expect people to spend, basically I've spent 7 years exclusively looking at every dimension of this story that I can, and I'll continue to do it. I don't expect people to do that. But simple answers to complex problems, this is not what this time is about. And there's a lot of people promising simple answers to complex problems. And it's not. There's lots and lots of things we've got to be doing. But all of us just start with reducing our impact, our energy consumption and material consumption, which are together often, right? Because to create something from a material requires energy. Look at 70% and just start somewhere. But then move forward. But it's a pleasure. It's a pleasurable process, because when you start to see your own impact, you want to do better, and then you want to do better, and you bring your family on the journey with you, and then you talk about it in your community, and it's a pleasure. It really is. But it's not just technology.
Yeah, that's the big challenge. I think what I've been thinking about recently has been about this idea of growth versus scale, right? So the issue that we have as a race, if you like, is that we focus on the idea of growing the result or doing more, and we think the answer is always going to be in growth. And I heard a definition which I find is a useful idea, that when you think about growth, growth means adding more to do more. And the other idea is the scale. Scale is actually doing more, but not by adding more, but not by. So you take what you have already, and then you increase, or you work on the output. And I think what we have as a potential is the potential to change the way we look at the world, so that we actually work on scaling rather than growing. And inadvertently, you're going to try and say, okay, I'm going to try to. Growth is going to be necessary, but when you scale, that can have a profound impact. So the equivalent could happen if you think about how AI can be put into use. Or let me use a real example that I saw the other day. AI now can help someone who's looking for the right kind of medical care or regime to get good suggestions, right? And this is where it can actually help you to figure out what a good next step is going to be. So now it sounds like a really risky thing to leave it to AI to figure that out, but if you understand what AI is about, the large language model, it's about the condensation of wisdom and written words by a whole bunch of people over an eon of time. And if you understand more about it, in this particular example, they basically figured out ways to prompt AI so they could give more useful human responses that would actually help in elderly care, right? That was one example. Another example I saw of it being used, and this is where you think about scaling, right? I had a friend who runs a company, and there was an issue between two employees, and it was a he said she said kind of a situation about a particular project, and there was a problem, and he sat down with them and said, "Look, just tell me what happened. Everybody, just tell me what happened." And the whole thing was recorded, and he fed the whole thing into AI, and AI basically did the analysis and basically said, well, this person is probably lying, that person not, and they gave all the reasons for it.
Oh wow!
And I know it's scary for that kind of thing to be happening or possibly happening. It wasn't solely based on the AI's output or input, but it was a very, very big part of the ability of this person to solve a management problem without making it be a long like a long tail thing. It was such that you could have that conversation, you could get the result, and you could analyze the result, and you could make the decision much faster. So where it's going to make a difference and where we are going to scale, for instance, with technology, and I think where AI can help a lot, is the amount of stuff that we can do just because we know how to do it now, right? So that's potentially something really good. It's potentially where the world gets to a place, and this is really it's a utopian idea, but think about a world where we know the work that we are going to get to do, or the work that we need to do, only takes 2 or 3 hours a day. We just know that to be a fact. We know people are going to learn stuff, but you're basically flogging a horse if you make them work for 2 or 3 hours or even 4 hours a day. It's just wasting time. Everyone's just doing theater, right? And if you think about that ability now outside of that to do things and solve problems, would we be able to scale Google's idea, for instance, of saying, I'm going to put 20% of my time to other things because I have the time, and it's actually mandated, right? So could a world where we use 20% of our excess capacity, freed up perhaps by AI, to solve the world's environmental problems, for instance, could that be a world that would be better?
Yeah, and that's the sort of thinking, right? It's some sort of way, because people won't change what they're doing right now because they can't, because they need to earn money to pay for their mortgage or buy food and right? So we do need to be, my thing is, government should be offering as like a universal basic income to anyone who wants to be part of a national movement to regenerate the land, right? So they can leave their jobs because they've got a guaranteed income, and that can be part of the problem, a part of the solution, right? So, but when I'm listening to you, I think it's a case of, try not to be scared of AI or technology, just be curious about it and keep your eye on it, because it's not all good. But but if you're only paying attention to what's not good, you're not paying attention to the potential of what could be amazing, or even you could be the person that comes up with the ideas of what's amazing by being open-minded, right?
Well, sometimes again, also it's about the expectations that we think other people are going to have, right? So in the US, one of the things that I heard, which was interesting, was not about AI, but about union negotiations, and I think and I can't recall the exact region, but there was a union negotiation where they were talking about higher productivity, and and one of the natural ideas that most people would have had is we therefore want to guarantee the pay and the hours and what have you, right? And the negotiation actually took a turn in a direction that and found approval as well in an area that people thought, well, that's interesting. They actually went for lower work hours, less work hours, and it found support as well, because there does really seem to be a change in the way the world values its time, right? It is recognizing that there's more automation coming our way. There's all these different things that are in part of our mix, and at the same time, it's also being taken on board. So as much as the French were outliers with their 4-day work week before, I think they're going to be more and more the case as the reason to have someone work more than 4 days a week is going to leave.
Yeah, I suppose the thing that I'm always conscious of there is technology has never made our lives easier. It's always promised to make our lives easier, and it never has, as far as workers, right? So, right back from the 50s, the washing machine, all the wonderful things that were sold to the middle class American housewife was supposed to make her life easier, but it never did. Sure, it was easier to wash your clothes, but it just meant that there was more and more things. So there's actually no example of reduction in a time or work from technology. People are working more and more, right?
Well, I want to put it.
Just think of all the messages that you get across all of the different platforms that we're on today, from social media and email. And we were there at the beginning of email when we all had one email address, and now you have multiple email addresses, most of which you don't even look at anymore because they're full of newsletters you never subscribe to. So I got one email account. I just go on and constantly delete the whole thing because there's no way I can manage it, right? And then you've got your inboxes everywhere. And people are talking to you, asinine comments, someone you've never met in your life. Hi, how are you today? Oh, go away. Like, if you honestly think I've got time to sit there and respond to every one of those, right? So I'm all for it, as long as it is genuinely going to make our lives easier, but in a way that it doesn't just make the companies who own the technology more profitable, because they've got less human capital costs because there's more automation. Are we going to work out a way? So Musk wants to be the first trillionaire. He wants to be. That's not something any man on this planet should be aiming for, right? And it's not. We should never live in a society with the wealth disparity. So it's just about, we've got to think about all those things together, right?
It's a difficult thing to think about. What may be the best thing? Like, you were just talking about how life hasn't gotten better because of some of the things that's supposed to make things better.
It has gotten better. It has gotten better, but at the same time, it hasn't gotten better, right? Like if you actually sat down with most people and said to them, is your life better? Yeah, of course it's better. You got more money, you can travel more, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this, right? But really, has it gotten better? Like, are you at peace within yourself? Are you content with your life? Are you happy with your relationships? Like if you ask are you happy with how you spend your time? Do you have enough time to, to listen to music or to paint? I watch my teenagers, they've got their AirPods in and they're listening to music. I don't spend time that way because I'm older and there's different things that you've got to do. But if you actually ask the majority of people, is life better? I don't think most people would say yes. Because as more and more things have become profit focused, we're talking about the United Healthcare thing. Is there an industry that isn't profit focused, or should we go and say what industries shouldn't be profit focused, so they can just be delivering a service that is required for people to thrive, right? So I think we've got some big questions to ask ourselves. That's all I'm saying. Like, and I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, and one that doesn't have an end within this period I think we have right now.
No. Yeah. So all right, so we should wrap up. But I just wanted to, we sort of said, the greatest lessons we've learned this year, and I just want to share a couple of sort of my big takeaways before we sort of go. The first thing is gaslighting, right? So this is the definition of gaslighting means to manipulate someone using psychological methods into questioning their own sanity or powers of reasoning. So I've seen 2024 specifically as being a time when the whole world was gaslit. And it's an intellectually fascinating thing to be observing, but it's also an extremely alarming thing to observe. Because the problem is with being gaslit is you don't really see it, especially if they're good at it. And they're coming thick and fast for anyone who is fighting for human decency or a better future, right? So it's really quite remarkable. So to me, Musk is one of the great gaslighters, and so he talks a great fight around free speech, and is threatening countries across the world that they have to get on board with his idea of free speech. And he's always accusing the left of the people on the left are trying to take free speech away. But the only person who is actively obstructing free speech is Musk. He games the algorithm. If you criticize him, if you post certain memes about him, if you use Grok to do things about him, he's interfered with that. So to me, he's that. The other thing that happened this year is it was the war on woke, and woke lost. And we talked about wokeness a few no shows ago. I find it an aggressive and patronizing label that's been given to people who really are just decent human beings who want the best for themselves and their neighbors and their communities, right? So I found it a really horrible thing to witness. I think we need to get rid of this label, and I think we've got to look at George Orwell. We've got to stop using their words that they're using against us, because being woke is not bad. So let's stop even using the word, because what we're trying to do is build a better world and take care of our neighbours, especially for me here in the global south. We've also seen that we've had a war against DEI, and one of my things that I've said for a long time is equality is good for everyone. Everyone wins with equality. And that picture that I showed you of 5 white men who are going to determine so many people's future, it's 5 white men that have gotten us to the place that we're in the world at the moment, not those 5 white men, other 5 white men, right? So anyone who fights against equality, so from Afghanistan to the White House, is fighting against goodness for everybody, because everybody wins with equality. So that's something else. The tech bros this year have really showed their teeth about power, making money, not supporting candidates that are on the side of the people, so that was something that really annoyed me this year. Community cooperation has to be one of the biggest focuses that we have moving forward. So coming together, taking care of each other, taking care of our communities, and fighting at the community level. So it's really time to rise and work together as we go into 2025. I just really want to encourage people to get on the streets, get back on social media, and be a voice in the fight, because right now decency is losing. And it's losing because it's absconding from its responsibility in the conversation, because the conversation's gotten so ugly. And that means we're going to have the future that we don't want, which is the ugly thing that everyone's walking around. So please, if you're in the moderate left, if you're in the moderate right, let's come together, let's work together. And the extremes are definitely lost to us. The media is a real issue for everybody, and the trust in media has gone down, and we need to get it back. Because it's an important resource in the world. The left voice in the media in particular is being decimated, and it's being sold off. But it's not just the media, it's also influencers that we've seen have really sort of raised their voices and dominated, and there's money in it. There's a lot of money in it, but there's not a lot of money in it for the left. So we've got to balance that out. We need balance. You don't have to agree with somebody, but we should have, if we truly believe in democracy, we should agree that both voices should be represented, and they're not. So definitely pay for any media that you value. I do, and be a voice of influence in the world as well. We need you. The other thing that I think is a big lesson for me this year is we've got to make sure the men are all right, the men and the boys. There are millions and millions of men across our countries around the world who are not economically thriving, and they're not romantically thriving either. Like massive percentages of men who have not had sex in the last 12 months, massive percentages in like the 20, 30 sort of age group. No society benefits from that many men being in that situation. So we've got to address it. And I think the place to start addressing it is with men, being mentors, being role models, building community connection with the younger men. If there's a single mother who's doing her best by her kids, if she's got sons, he needs role models. We've got to make sure that we don't leave anyone alone, and we've got to be there. So I think women have got a role to do with women and girls, and men have got a role to do with men and boys, because it's becoming quite extreme, the move to the right. It's not necessarily all far right, but a lot of the right movement in voting is definitely young men, and in many cases it's voting not in their own interest, especially because they will be the war fodder if war breaks out. So on the left side, I think we've got to get rid of cancel culture, political correctness needs to go into the dustbin of history, and we've got to start getting tough, and we've got to start, being able to speak without worrying that we're going to offend somebody, and everyone's got to stop being so bloody sensitive. I know what I mean when I speak. I don't expect to be attacked for the words that I use, because it's exhausting, and it means that people aren't going to speak. So that's kind of some of the big takeaways that I wanted to add from my year. Joe?
Well, I find myself because I am the kind of person I am, thinking opposite thoughts, to a lot of things. And so one of the things that I do think about is this: we have a tendency to forget that we are learners. And what I mean by that is we learn how to be what we are, how we accumulate our beliefs based on our experience, and everybody is in the same boat. And we tend to come into things with bias, and bias is the nature of bias is most of us don't have any idea that we're biased. So when we're faced with situations where there's conflict of difference over the way I think and you think and everything else, we are quite certain about ourselves and quite certain about what we believe, and usually we're also very certain about the error of the ways of the other person.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking about, the idea that we should really be thinking about, is how everyone is actually right in their world. Everyone actually believes what they believe because of what they've seen and what they've been, what they've experienced. And one of the ideas that I heard this year, which I thought was very good, is just think of everybody else as an 8-year-old, right? Just be prepared to think of everybody else as an 8-year-old with the needs that you have as an 8-year-old. Not just in terms of what you know, but also what you need from other people as an 8-year-old. And it was quite an interesting perspective, because if an 8-year-old came up to you with ideas that were completely crazy, and you were being a warm, compassionate person, you don't necessarily try to slap them around the head and say, "You terrible person, you were wrong." You might be curious about what they think, why they think, and then have a discussion, right? And if you've noticed 8-year-olds, they tend to get along. There's a tendency to kind of go like, yeah, we're just having fun, and then the more basic needs take over: having a drink, having some food, having some fun, running around, playing the games. And that comes about because they carry less baggage with them, right? So if we could walk around the world thinking about other people as people who had less baggage, and we ourselves carry around less baggage, I think we'd be better off.
So Joe's takeaway from 2024: be an 8-year-old. I like it. It just moved out of the age of chaos into the age of logic. So it's that really early part of sort of bringing your brain together.
Yeah, you could. I didn't say 12-year-old because I think that's a terrible time. But 8 years old, 8 years old is good. And the other idea is about just a perspective of the migrant mindset, if you like. I think a lot of the world has kind of forgotten what it's like collectively, what it's like to arrive somewhere and not know how things work, and therefore try to figure out how things are going to work. And I think there's a primal instinct to want to belong, right? We enter a place. The moment you enter a room, you try to figure out what this room's about. And if you feel, and most of us are inclined towards it, I know some people who are not, possibly myself as well. But you want to belong. The first thing you want to do is you want to belong. So to belong, you'll do what the others do, and you look around and go like, "Oh, this is an acceptable thing," and you're willing to open up to some ideas. And before long, you realize you've got some ideas which are just based on everybody else, and you want significance, right? You're the 8-year-old as well. You want to be liked by your friends, and you might do things as you did as an 8-year-old where you go like, "Oh, that was a mistake." But if we're all good about it, we can get over it. We're not going to forever learn the lessons and hold you to it. Like I think that's a kind of thing to get around. So to appreciate that we are learners, to appreciate that we all have this need to be liked by the people around us, to belong to a group, and then we all need to forgive each other. And I think the way you can is how you frame the person that's across from you, right? If you I think older people have trouble forgiving friends or forgiving each other until they realize they're running out of time. But usually because they get to a point where they go like, you know what, I got no time for this, right? I don't need to spend this time to try and accommodate other people or what have you and all that. But yeah, if you can find more of that energy as a child for yourself, and also to frame other people in it, I think we could lead to us not a totally fixed world, but I think it'd be better.
Yeah, I agree. I try not to sit in any anger towards anyone ever. Like I really do. I find that really interesting. The clans sort of come together, and there's this fury directed to anyone outside of their clan, and I can't imagine living with that inside of me, that anger. So I just don't. I don't hate any. Like my boys will say to me sometimes, "Who do you hate, Mum?" I don't hate anyone. They're like, "Don't you hate Donald Trump?" I'm like, "No, of course I don't hate Donald Trump. He's just a symptom of a society." Like they all are. Everyone is. We're all symptoms of the society that we were brought up in. So yeah, living without hate in your heart's a good place to go, and just because it actually makes you more curious when when I meet somebody who has ideas that I don't live by. It's not about me agreeing with them or not. I just don't live by. I'm curious what they think and why.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Yeah,
Should we wrap up? I've
I
had to
think we
drink a
should.
lot. I've had to drink a lot, so I'm going to have to make a run.
Yeah. Okay. Same here. I'm
Get
I'm holding it in. Okay.
Yeah.
So the last
My
question we
throat's
always
almost
ask is
made it.
what's keeping us distracted. I've been catching up finally with Shrinking, the show that's been
Oh,
mentioned a few times
so
here.
good.
It's still rounding up its second or third season, I think it is, and
Yeah.
still new episodes dropping, but absolutely one of the nicest series. And the other one that I've been finding very relatable is actually Hacks, which is about basically an older stand-up comedian who is embarking on some new ideas because of changing circumstances around herself, and there's a young person involved. But what I find very interesting about it is it's how it relates to me as someone who's had an observed level of success in a certain field, and some of the fears that I go through as I try to do new things, sometimes in and around the same field. So, and it's funny. So
Yeah.
Hacks as in HACKS.
Okay. Have you watched Fisk yet?
Not yet. It's on the list.
The Australian drama?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to really like that. As someone who's lived in Australia, that the main female character, I totally relate to it. She's just sort of sitting around, just sort of rolling her eyes at the ridiculous behaviours being expressed around her, right? So it's kind of what we were talking about before. When I was younger, I was definitely like that. Like, oh, what the hell is wrong with you? But now I'm like, that's kind of curious. Those sort of people, they're people who take themselves too seriously. I find them the most interesting people in whatever context.
Well, what else have you been doing recently?
So I can't recommend anything at the moment. So Steve's been away I haven't seen him for more than a week. And I have like been really feeling like shit. So I have been watching on Netflix Christmas movies because I know he'd never watch them, because I just wanted to watch nice things that made me smile. And the reason I can't recommend any of them is because they're all so bad. Like there's something about them that is so bad, poor acting, weak storyline, but they're still kind of nice and make you smile. So no recommendations for me. But go and if you feel like just just having a bit of a smile on your face, not thinking too much. Netflix has so many Christmas movies. I didn't know there were that many. It's not the famous ones. It's all these other ones. Yeah. So,
yeah, they got these titles that almost sound like they might be porn films. They're
But there's a Ted Danson series that I've got to start watching. I haven't watched it yet. And,
that's good. It's a man on the inside, or the inside man.
Yeah.
That is a good one. It's also very, very pertinent for anybody who's if you're actually if you have someone who's older in your life, maybe you don't quite understand them, or you're having a bit of friction with them. That might be a little bit of a gateway into the understanding a little bit more about the psyche. I think that'd be useful. Yeah.
All right.
I just want to say. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, Andrea, if there's anyone who should have a mental health crisis that I know, in terms of knowing what the world is about and how bad things are and why we shouldn't be enthusiastic or about things to come, it'd be you, right? And I think you are the model of what people should consider doing when they face the world as we know it. I mean, understand it, get to know it, really, really get to see the animal with its teeth bared right in front of you, and then go like, okay, that's interesting, and do something about it, and maybe not do every single thing, because you're not. I think what I like about you is you're someone who understands the big problem, but you're not insisting that everyone around you becomes a vegan. You're not insisting everyone around you does everything that they need to do to fix the world. You're putting the message out, and you are encouraging people along. I think in terms of and this is seriously, this is the absolute truth. In terms of anyone who's had any influence on my feeling about the environment, you've had the greatest influence on me by not trying to force me to think about things in a certain way.
Yeah. You can't force it. And if you're not willing to face it, that's cool too. All I say is just believe the people who've spent the time trying to understand it and working out what to do. The systemic change right across the board is what is going to make the biggest difference. But I think if we can all move towards changing our own lifestyles and reducing our impact, that will signal to governments and business leaders that we're ready for that change. And so, it's all in it together now. And thank you. I appreciate it, Joe. Mental health wise, like, there's been a lot of dark times, really, really dark, like when you really comprehend what's going on here. But I don't want to sit in darkness, right? And let's try. And hopefully that gives inspiration to people too, that I'm not sitting in darkness, because that's not a good message either, right? So we've got to try. But anyway, happy holidays. Merry Christmas, Joe. I think you celebrate Christmas too, right?
Yeah, we got to have people around the house. Yeah.
Nice. We're going out for a brunch, and going to get drunk with the boys for the first time now that we've got an 18-year-old. But yeah, 2025 is going to be probably as rough, if not rougher, than this year. So get ready. So enjoy the times, enjoy the family, enjoy the community, and take a break. I'm looking forward to it. We'll be back in February, after the first Friday after Chinese New Year, right?
Yep. We'll see you on the other side, everybody.
Yeah. So thanks, Joe. And
Thanks,
see you
Andrea.
soon, Tim. All right. See you guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.